Praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon His last messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his companions, and those who follow the right path. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you and the mercy of Allah and His grace. Welcome again to Understanding Islam Ramadan. Dear beloved viewers, today's episode comes when Muslims are fully experiencing the blessed month of Ramadan, the month of obedience and worship, when Muslims strive to be close to Allah Almighty. And one of the ways to do that is by the worship named i'tikaf. So what is i'tikaf and how is it performed? What are its rules and regulations? And what are its goals and benefits? I'tikaf is a temporary seclusion in a masjid or mosque, staying there for a certain period of time with the intention of obedience to Allah Almighty, temporarily secluding yourself from the chores of life and the material world and devoting your time to worship and prayers. It is an important way to perform more worship, gain more rewards, reflect on yourself and life, and recharge your spiritual well-beings. I'tikaf can only be performed in a masjid or mosque. It cannot be performed anywhere else, not even in musalla or prayer rooms. It is mentioned in the Holy Quran as a form of worship since at least the time of Abraham alayhi salam. Allah the Almighty says, "And when we made the house at Mecca a resort for mankind and sanctuary, saying, take as your place of worship the place where Abraham stood to pray. And we imposed a duty upon Abraham and Ismail, saying, purify my house for those who perform tawaf, circumambulation, and those who perform i'tikaf, and those who bow down and prostrate themselves in worship." Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 125. Although it is very important and recommended in Islam, i'tikaf is not obligatory, but a sunnah practiced by the Messenger ﷺ and Muslims throughout history. Women can perform i'tikaf as well, as the wives of the Messenger ﷺ, and peace be upon them, used to do, provided that there is a specific place for them in the masjid. Discerning children can also perform i'tikaf. Some scholars hold the view that it is allowed for a woman to perform i'tikaf in her prayer place at home. There is no specific time for i'tikaf. It can be performed any time of the year. But i'tikaf is highly recommended in Ramadan, and more so in the last 10 days of Ramadan. There is also no specific length for i'tikaf, although it is desirable to be no less than a day and a night. One can perform a short i'tikaf for an hour or two, or a longer one for days at a time. The Messenger ﷺ started making i'tikaf in the first 10 days of Ramadan, then the second 10 days of Ramadan, and finally the last 10 days of Ramadan. He ﷺ continued to perform i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. In his last year in this world, he ﷺ doubled that and performed i'tikaf in all the last 20 days of Ramadan. When intending to perform i'tikaf in the last 10 days, one should enter the masjid with the intention of i'tikaf before the sunset of the 20th day of Ramadan. And he should remain in the masjid till the sunset of the last day of Ramadan, that is, the night before the festival. One can also stay in the masjid till the following Fajr prayer, then leave after Fajr to prepare for Eid or the festival. There are requirements for the person getting in the state of i'tikaf. After the intention of i'tikaf, the most important requirement is the major ritual purity for both men and women. If a case of an impurity happens, they must perform the major purification, then continue the i'tikaf. It is allowed to end the state of i'tikaf at any time. If one wants to return back to i'tikaf, he must make a new intention, then enters the masjid. When in the state of i'tikaf, one is not allowed to leave the masjid except for a real necessity. One cannot leave the masjid to visit a sick friend or attend a funeral, except if he made a condition when he started the i'tikaf to be able to do that. Leaving the masjid at any time when there is no need breaks the state of i'tikaf. Dear viewers, we will return soon with morals on the spiritual benefits of i'tikaf, so stay with us. Welcome back to Understanding Islam. Dear viewers, everybody needs sometimes to himself to think about their life and their actions, to meditate in seclusion, away from the hectic, busy lifestyle that most people live nowadays. When in the state of i'tikaf, one should free themselves from all outside thoughts, problems, and desires. I'tikaf is not an escape from life and its needs and demands, but a temporary seclusion to recharge your soul and spirit. It also works as time out from the material world to regain perspective and redefine your goals, and to increase your determination and get the strength to carry on and face the difficulties of life with faith and love, mercy and forgiveness. As the purpose of i'tikaf is to seclude yourself for the sake of Allah the Almighty. When you are in the state of i'tikaf, one should clear his mind from the material world and its problems, and work on bettering himself and his soul. He should occupy himself with all kinds of worships and good deeds, such as remembering Allah the Almighty, praising and glorifying Him, thanking Him, asking for forgiveness, praying for all your needs, reciting the Holy Quran, sending peace and blessing on the Messenger ﷺ, performing extra prayers and worship, abstaining from vain talk and useless chat as much as possible. It is allowed to speak and talk normally with people and with family while you are in the state of i'tikaf. Husband and wife can talk, but need to be careful from sliding into the material emotions and intimate chats. This is especially important nowadays with all the new means of communications and accessibilities, mobiles and smartphones, etc. It is very easy to get diverted from your i'tikaf and its purposes. Many people overlook these important guidelines and spend their i'tikaf time in useless matters or gathering to socialize and spend the nights eating and drinking and joking and talking. These things contradict the wisdom for which i'tikaf was legalized in Islam. The wisdom behind i'tikaf is to completely devote yourself to the worship of Allah Almighty, forsaking worldly matters and the material desires, and trying to imitate the angels who worship Allah Almighty all their times and all their lives without rest. The main goal is to purify your soul and elevate your spiritual and religious experience and to be closer to Allah Almighty. I'tikaf has many benefits: strengthening the relationship with Allah Almighty, increasing sincerity and devotion, strengthening willpower and self-control. It is not a refusal of life and enjoyment, but more like a vaccine injection to increase immunity against sins, whims, and wrong desires, putting you back in control of your life and future. Dear fasting brothers, we should practice this sunnah and avail this great opportunity, turning our hearts and souls to Allah Almighty in obedience and humbleness, so that when we get out from i'tikaf, we have increased our belief, strengthened our faith, gained more piety, and get closer to Allah Almighty. Dear viewers, we supplicate to Allah Almighty to grant us success in this great month, to facilitate i'tikaf for us, and to grant us Laylatul Qadr. Ameen. See you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you, and the mercy of Allah and His grace.